Wellness is the present, it's the future, it's not going anywhere, it's only getting bigger. And who doesn't want to age better, live longer? It's not about length of life, it's about quality of life.
Well, today is one of those podcasts you get very excited for. So welcome, Steven.
Welcome, Brad. Thank you for having me.
Super excited to have you on. So we have Steven Koeppel, and you are owner, founder, great guy of Thriver Wellness Supply. And we connected, a month ago. I know a lot of our circles we run together, but it's been very exciting to get to know you and what you're doing in the wellness space. And I wanted to get you on the podcast because I think there's a lot of education for not just my clients and platform, but also for other builders and architects and so many in the community that are looking to push their brand, and clients that are requesting, so many unique products in their home to, have a better life.
Yeah, listen, wellness is the present, it's the future, it's not going anywhere, it's only getting bigger. And who doesn't want to age better, live longer? It's not about length of life, it's about quality of life. So if we could be a robust 80-year-old with the metabolic age of a 50 or 60-year-old, or you could be a sickly, infirm 60-year-old with the metabolic age of an 80-year-old. I mean, it's not a tough choice.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We look back, I saw the Brady Bunch as a kid, and you see the ages of the Brady Bunch,
Yeah,
like Alice and some other
yeah.
ones to call them out. And they're like 35, 40, and you look at someone 35, 40 now, how much different it is. And, so much has come a long way, but even as far as we've come, there's still so much more to unpack. And I want to get into this because there's some specifics that you're doing. And where I want to start, Stephen, what I'm really impressed about your studio is the education side. We can talk a little bit later in this podcast about the hair analysis you did for me and Emmy. But I want to start with the VEMI table. You had the VEMI table. I had never heard of that till I've been there. Walk me through the benefit.
So you're taking three extremely effective modalities. It's PEMF, which is pulse electromagnetic field, similar to grounding. So if you lay it on the earth, you're getting that magnetic energy from the earth, but at a million times a level. It's got infrared, so not infrared where you think of hot as in an infrared sauna, but infrared wavelengths. There is a little bit of heat. And then you've got vibroacoustic. Vibroacoustic works off frequencies, sound, music, different methods, but the frequencies can be very healing, not only for our mind, but for our body. So we've got vibroacoustic of a number of different modalities, the VEMI table being one of them. And you could be everything from inflammation to recovery to sleep to energy. So there's a physical and mental benefit to it. Now, the VEMI table, I like to say it's a once in a lifetime experience every time you use it. I always use the analogy of when we plug in our cell phones at night and we recharge our cell phones. Imagine if you could do that to your body and recharge your body at a cellular level. That's what we're doing with the VEMI table, hitting over 1 trillion cells in every session, 30 or 60 minutes. We're get over 1.5 million frequencies for the vibroacoustic. So when you get off the VEMI table, you feel energized but relaxed. You feel heightened but calm. It's just both from a physical as well as a mental standpoint. I have not found anything else that is nearly as effective. It's incredibly effective for people who suffer from anxiety, mental issues. It's very calming for the mind as well as the body.
It's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, us as humans, we kind of have this fight or flight mentality. We're kind of, naturally wired that way. And in speaking with you and research behind the scenes on the VEMI table, it talks about how it just kind of shifts you from this fight or flight into a more relaxed state, as you mentioned, someone that maybe you're dealing with anxiety.
Yeah, so it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is very, very beneficial in terms of calming, restoring us. We're in a heightened state, not only because of the world we live in and everything going on, but social media, online. You
Mhm.
look at everything becomes immediate gratification. Benefits of a lot of our equipment, it gives you immediate gratification, including the VEMI table. So, as I said, from a mental and a physical reset, restore, recharge, renew, it gives you all of that.
Where, how did you come up with the concept? I know you have a personal story element to this, Stephen. You battle cancer. You've been open about that. How has that changed your perspective on life, business, and kind of this second pursuit that you have going on right now?
So I'll give you a brief history. So 2000, May 31st, 2023, went to my doctor, general checkup. I go twice a year, stay on top of my health as best I can. Looked at my labs. He said, your lymphocytes are a little elevated, your white blood cell count is slightly elevated, and your platelet count is slightly low. He said, kind of low. He said, probably have a virus, but let's do a couple of more tests. So virus turned out to be stage 4 cancer, of a very rare and aggressive form of cancer without a single symptom. When I went for all types of really invasive tests to determine not only what type of cancer, the severity of the cancer, the course of treatment, and so on and so forth. They were amazed. They said, well, how's your energy level? I said, I'm great. I'm in the gym 6 days a week. I am active. I am doing everything. I said, why do you ask? They said, well, based on your platelet count, your borderline transfusion level, you should be bedridden based on this. So all along when I was doing my treatment, I really, I was a former competitive athlete. So I really elevated, and I was the go-to wellness guy. So all along for decades, people would come to me and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, suffering from this, or I want to get to the next level with this. I was always the go-to guy. So when I was first diagnosed, everyone I knew said, well, you're the healthiest person I know. How do you get cancer? I said, well, I'll never know, but if I can get cancer, everybody should be concerned because I did everything I could to avoid getting cancer and all these other diseases. So when I was going through my treatment, I had to step it up to another level because not only did I want to beat cancer, but I wanted my post recovery and my longevity to be what as long as it could be and have a very high quality of life for as long as I can live.
It's interesting. I mean, you credit that you've always been active, you've been healthy, you lifted weights, like you've been, you're an athlete. So like it helped you kind of fight stage 4 cancer, which is pretty rare to get through. I mean, my dad passed away from stage 4 cancer, Steven. For you to be here as healthy as you are, it's very impressive because that's a long, hard fought battle. What do you attribute to getting you through mentally, physically, as you're going through? I don't know if you went through chemo or, how extensive, the treatment was. What did that look like for you?
So my background, I'm 41 years in martial arts. I've sparred tens of thousands of rounds. I've had a couple of amateur cage fights, from karate to kickboxing to full MMA. I still train. So I've been, concussed. I've cracked 5 broken noses, anything and everything. So to me, I'm a fighter. Cancer, I looked at it, this is my toughest fight yet. I am literally, when I talk about, I get in a ring or a cage and you're fighting for your life. I mean, anything could happen. You never know. But I was literally fighting for my life. So very early on, I went through very, very, very intensive chemotherapy at Mayo Clinic here in Phoenix. And chemo sucked because for typically the second day after the infusion. So the first infusions were 3 weeks apart. I was there for about 11 to 12 hours per infusion. So it was a full day process. The second day after, it was like death. When I say like death, it felt like dying. I am full of energy. It's tough to keep me down. I was bedridden. I was green. I had no energy. I was throwing up. When I couldn't throw up anymore, I was dry heaving. I couldn't even lift myself out of bed. And by the 5th day, maybe, I had enough energy. I was up. I would take the dog for a short walk. By the 6th, 7th day, I was back in the gym, working out, get my strength back. 2 weeks later, same process. And then mid-treatment, so Halloween 2023, I had to go for a CAT scan because I had a form of lymphoma called mantle cell lymphoma, only about 2,000 cases a year. When they were doing my CAT scan, 2 hours later, I get a call from my oncology team. They were checking the results of the chemo. So I'd just finished my first round of chemo, waiting to start my much more intensive second round. When I went for the CAT scan, I got a call 2 hours later from my oncologist. I said, how's everything look? She said, great on the treatment front, but you've got a more pressing issue. I said, what's more pressing than stage 4 cancer? They said, you have a ruptured appendix. I said, okay, well, that would explain the severe pain I've been in for the last 3 weeks and the 18 pounds I've lost in the last, a month
Oh
or
my
so
gosh.
from since I started chemo, or 2 months, and they thought it was all from the chemo, and it turned out that I'd been walking around with a ruptured appendix for 6 weeks.
Oh my Lord.
So they said, "You've got to check in the hospital today." I said, "Well, I can't. My wife was in Europe visiting my daughter who was studying abroad." I said, "I can come in 3, 4 days. I have nobody to watch my German Shepherd." She said, the doctor's exact words were, "Steven, you could fucking die. You literally might be in surgery in a couple hours. So someone from Mayo Clinic is going to call you. They're going to tell you what time to show up this afternoon, and you just be there." So my son came home from LA to watch the dog. My wife was still in Europe visiting my daughter. Checked in the hospital. That's when they determined I had a ruptured appendix. I've been walking around with it for 6 weeks. 3 doctors treating me said, "We have no idea how you're alive." I said, "Forget the cancer. We've never seen anything like it." They gave me my very first infusion. I still have my chemo port. They gave me my first infusion through my chemo port of heavy antibiotics. All my pain went away. I felt great, got my appetite back. 2 days later, 3 days later, they still couldn't get a clear picture of my appendix because it was completely encapsulated. And they said, "We can't operate. Number one, we can't get a clear picture of it. Number two, because we can't operate on infected tissue, there's no way to suture it." So by the 2.5 days in, I said, "Look, I feel fantastic. If you're not operating, I am checking myself out tomorrow. I'm going home." Sure enough, the next day came. They said, "Look, you're likely past the danger zone. It's been, you walked around with it for 6 weeks." So I checked out. They had someone meet me at my house. They taught me how to give me my own infusions. They left my port accessed. I did 32 IVs in 8 days
Oh my
myself
Lord.
at home, 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m., an hour and a half each time. And then I had to go on oral antibiotics, had to wait 5 weeks to get all the antibiotics out of my system before I could resume my much more intensive second round of chemo in December 2023. So to make a short story long, or a long story short, then I finished my second round and was declared in full remission February of 2024.
Wow. So this is, a year and a half ago
Almost
that,
2 years. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
almost 2 years. As you look at this, Stephen, I think not that you're going to ride off in the sunset, but I think having gone through that, that's trying. And here you are in this new business venture.
Mhm.
What kind of flipped that switch for you to get into this space?
So when I was going through my treatment, I had just, I was aware of, sauna and cold plunge and red light and hyperbaric and everything else. But I really started researching their benefits, not only for treatment, but post treatment, and especially my ability to maximize the efficacy of the treatments in this severe chemotherapy I was going through, because chemotherapy not only kills the bad, it kills a lot of the good and affects a lot of the good in our cells and inflammation and chemo brain. I never felt stupid in my life until I went through
Hmm.
chemotherapy, and we could have this conversation and 4 hours later I wouldn't even remember it. So it was, chemo brain is a real thing. So I started researching all the different modalities, and I went online. I Googled, let me go buy cold plunge, red light, uh, infrared sauna. That was the initial trifecta, and there was nowhere I can go. Literally nowhere I can go. There was one place had a cold plunge stuck in the corner. Another place had a sauna, out back. Couldn't give me any information. So I started looking online. You call the companies selling these things, and everybody's got the best product, and everybody else sucks, but they can't tell you why. I want detail. They can't tell you why and how and what it does and whatever else. So I started researching all the modalities, learning everything I could about them, and eventually started purchasing the equipment online. And then a week later, an 800-pound pallet showed up. A couple days later, a 500-pound pallet showed up. A few days later, a 1,200-pound pallet shows up. And I thought to myself, I said, "There's got to be a better way. This is crazy." So once I was declared in full remission, my chemo brain started loosening a bit. I was I don't like to use the word semi-retired. I was taking a break. I've been starting and running businesses for 35 years or more, and sold my last business in New York in 2020. It was acquired by Lifetime Athletic. Came back to Arizona, and so I was on an extended break. And I said, "You know what? This is an opportunity for me to put together an assortment of the finest wellness modalities and equipment from around the world, to have to become a one-stop resource for everything wellness." I build businesses. I pride myself on creating an exceptional experience, being a resource for the correct and proper information and knowledge, and just being just here for anything anybody needs when it comes to health and wellness and improving their lives, their longevity, their vitality. So when I started calling around and getting to some high level people in the industry and asking, where can I go and see who's doing this? Because I know I could do it better. I want to see who's doing it. There was no one doing it. It was hard to believe. I said, what about in Canada? I'll fly to Canada. Nobody. I said, this is too good to be true. So, came up with the concept. Everything is in my head. I developed, I'm sure like you, I developed the entire concept in my head to every finite detail. Our name is derived from Thriver as a cancer survivor. It's somebody who overcomes adversity to become a better, stronger version of themselves. That's where our name comes from, Thriver Wellness Supply. And it took a while to find the right location and put everything together. And here we are, about a month and a half, 2 months in.
You know what's unique about this? Because you see a need. I think I had Ace Rodriguez on, and he's with Pickleball Kingdom, and he's always like, "There's riches and niches." But his thing is that you have to find a gap in the economy and the market, and then you figure out how to solve that, right? Like you saw this, Stephen, firsthand. You're going through your wellness journey. I mean, I call it a wellness journey, but for you, it's a survival journey. As you mentioned, thrive. Like you're not surviving, you're thriving. But the point being is, you see a need, right? You see a need for customers that do maybe going through the same thing. They maybe have the net worth and they want to be able to have access or a more first class, red carpet service through this experience. And I think what I find unique about your business, Stephen, of what I've been able to see so far, is you're really creating this intersection between, residential luxury, space with commercial grade wellness. And so as you've done that, what have you found to be the biggest, I guess, maybe education site to educate the clients that, hey, you have these commercial grade appliances. I call them appliances, but units, and you're working in this high end luxury space.
So we have three customers we serve. We serve a retail client, people come in our showroom, interested in equipment. We serve the trade, people like you building, the finest high-end homes, designers, architects. And then we have a commercial component, which is everything from retail wellness, a place you go for services, PT, medical, hospitality, spa, resort. So people come to us. I'm finding number one, you don't have to be, a multi millionaire to afford this equipment. Some of our equipment starts in the hundreds of dollars, and there are custom pieces which should go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But a lot of it, sauna, cold plunge, can start in the thousands of dollars. So people come to us. We want to be a resource for accurate information. We also work with people. What we do is, so you're coming in as a potential client. We're going to sit down. I'm going to say, Brad, what are you hoping to achieve? What are the specific issues you may be looking to address? What are you looking to get out of this? What are your thoughts? What are your hopes? What are your objectives? What do you know? Because a lot of people just have misinformation, completely incorrect from what the reality is of either use practices or benefits or side effects or whatever it may be, or interactions. So we want to get as much information as we can from the client, the end user, whoever we're dealing with, and then we could start put together a plan based on those needs and providing not only the finest equipment, but best use practices, how to use piece of equipment in conjunction with one another. I'll take something as simple as an infrared sauna. 100% of the people I speak to, 100% of the people, for something you turn it on, you get in a hot box, you get out, 100% of the people are using it incorrectly.
And that's interesting you bring that up, because as you think about the education side, are there common mistakes you've seen when people try to piece together wellness, without seeking professional guidance, such as yourself?
Yeah, yeah, they do, because people, they're going online and they're just getting an abundance of information, including some incorrect information. But the biggest thing is it just people have an idea. Most everybody has been in a sauna. Some people have been in a cold plunge. Not a lot of people have used hyperbaric or PEMF, or red light is becoming more common. So not only are we able to introduce them to other modalities, many of which could be more specific to issues they're looking to address or beneficial, but we could introduce people like yourself who are exposed to the highest end clients and homes that you're building. You just have no idea. You know what you know. So it was interesting when I asked five different designers, all designing homes in your category, where they're sourcing their equipment. Every single one of them, independently of one another, said Google. So they loved having someplace to go, as you will, as we start doing all these projects together. They'll that you could come, you could bring your clients, you could either turn them over to us or be fully involved in the process. And the people leave with the ideal setup they're excited to use, they're actually going to use, they're going to use in the right way, so they're going to get the most efficacy out of, and everybody is happy.
Yeah, I love that because, as you think about just the complication of building, I think over the years, buildings become more complicated between codes, municipalities, and jurisdictions. I mean, we have so much fighting against us, but from an infrastructure standpoint, what do clients, builders, architects need to understand when they're looking to design a wellness space?
They want to design some, as I said, first and foremost, something that's going to meet the client's needs, something they're going to use. If somebody says, I hate cold, I'm never going to take a cold shower, and who likes cold showers? It's funny when people say that all the time about cold plunges. I love cold plunging, I hate cold showers. But we want to give them equipment that they're going to use, that are going to, if their primary benefit, they're suffering from specific conditions, inflammation, arthritis. We're going to gear them to more towards modalities which are going to be beneficial towards that. Take them to the next level. Someone like you or I, who's already at a very high level. Again, we want to take that person to the next level, but really just getting the highest quality of equipment as well. Because, for example, again, getting back to a sauna, there's, you go into Costco or Amazon, you buy a sauna. It's essentially the equivalent in most cases of sitting in a microwave oven. You're absorbing so much radiation, toxicity from the inferior materials and woods they're using. So we want to give them the best equipment that's going to produce the best results with the best information.
What hurdles have you seen in starting your business?
To tell you the truth, this is the smallest business that I've launched. So I have everything from, I own car dealerships in New York City. You had Scottsdale Gene Company, which is 6 and 10,000 square foot stores with over 100 brands. Started a health and wellness, high-end health wellness fitness club on Long Island. This is relatively simple to the extent that fewer vendors, less. We don't have 1,000 different choices. I mean, we get into custom anything and everything, but it's just a matter of. I just had this conversation with someone today. My biggest challenge in any new business is we're not yet a brand. We're a new business. So my challenge is evolving. I'll use the word evolving. Thriver Wellness Supply into a brand that is synonymous with wellness and the finest in wellness and equipment and information. That's always the challenge.
No, it is the challenge. And you touched on this a little bit, that when you're going through this search personally, Steve, and you're looking online, you're going to Google, you're trying to mix and match, different pieces from different vendors. One of the most difficult thing is building vendor relationships. From a design perspective, they have to, build relationships with people supplying the furniture and, items for the end user. Some of these vendors require, minimums throughout the year, minimum purchases, minimum volume, for different multipliers and so forth. How hard was it for you to position yourself to say, okay, I'm going to position myself with this red light therapy company, with this cold plunge company, with this sauna company? How did you start building those vendor relationships and decide on which ones that you actually want to advertise and sell and put in your showroom?
That was the most challenging part, because being the very first to do what we're doing in our industry, we're literally laying the groundwork. So there was no precedent when I had. So I went out, I researched all the equipment to determine what I believe to be the finest in each category. And then I started approaching manufacturers. So I would get, in some cases, I could eventually get up to the founders, people running the companies. In other cases, I was dealing with, higher level sales reps and whatever it may be. But so when I would approach them, they would say, well, okay, oh yeah, you could sign up as an affiliate, or yeah, we have people, you could sell our product. I said, no, you don't understand. I am creating a very high-end showroom, a beautiful, beautiful showroom in a premium location in Scottsdale. This is my background. This is where I come from. This is what I built. I want to be the first authorized dealer for your brand. Now, the founders who are more progressive and are really, really understand the benefit of it were all in. As soon as they got to know me a little bit better, we spent time on Zoom, on the phone. They were overly enthusiastic. They say, "Look, we understand. Imagine you're buying your next Ferrari, and somebody says, here's a picture of it. Here, write me a check." And you've never seen a Ferrari before. Maybe you have. Say, "No, look, I want to come. I want to see it. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want to drive it before I cut you this big check." Now it's the same thing with wellness equipment that most people have never experienced. So the smarter people in the industry understood the value of having a showroom, just like with Sub-Zero or
Hmm.
Wolf, some of your
Yeah.
sponsors, where people
Hmm.
can go and see and touch and feel and even try the equipment in our showroom to understand what it's really about. And then you had other brands which saying, no, no, we don't have dealers, it's not our model. And I said, look, it was a lot of companies' models in other industries years ago. We're going to go all online and sell online. And then it became a hybrid model where they had to open stores. Otherwise, they were losing business to others who did. And when people want to experience the product, so that was the single biggest challenge, and it remains to this day. There are still certain products as we expand our offerings where some people see the vision and some people just don't have the vision.
It's interesting. As you were speaking about that, I was thinking through just the complication because there's so many layers to this. One, you're having to make sure that the product you're getting is vetted. It's like top tier luxury because that's what you're doing. Commercial grade. You mentioned you're selling retail. You're working with commercial companies. You're working with high end residential. Um, and I've had other vendors struggle with their manufacturers, whether they're national, local, or they're overseas, because look, you're waiting on them. Like, hey, I have a commitment. I'm going to order 10 units or 20 units, whatever. I'm giving you money overseas. Am I going to get the product? What's the service look like? What's the install look like? The training, the support. It's one thing to find the product to put in the showroom, but then the back end side, how's that been working through those challenges?
It's been good. It's a matter of just like you when you bring your subcontractors into a job and you want to award someone the job, they do their work. There's always the potential for issues, whether it be now or down the road. But you want to minimize the opportunity for those issues. So by connecting, and a lot of our products, especially the highest end projects, are domestically manufactured in their own factories. So it gives us the ability to really stay on top of not just the people, but any potential issues down the road and make sure things are handled as they should be, at any level, not just at this level. So, we want to become the intermediary. So when people, if there are issues, if there are questions, whatever it may be, they're coming back to us. They have a physical location, showroom person to reach out to rather than just, calling an 800 number and being stuck in limbo and starting a never-ending process.
What I love about you, Stephen, is I'm always fascinated with people, like any entrepreneur that starts a business. I think there's a lot of challenges to running a business. You know this firsthand. You've done this your whole life. As a builder or designer, it's a little bit more organic, right? You have to start building, word of mouth and reputation and maybe social media, a lot of different channels. You come in just guns a blazing. And what I mean is, Kelly Purslin, who's a great friend of both of us, she's been on the podcast with Modern Luxury Scottsdale. You had this great event. And how did this coordination come in with Kelly to come in and be like, okay, let's bring this to market really fast. Let's get in front of all the top architects, designers, and builders here in Phoenix and Scottsdale, to put on that event, to coordinate it, to get RSVPs, get people there. Why that strategy?
Well, Kelly and I go back about probably at least 15 years from my Scottsdale Gene Company days, which is 2005, 2015. So, we stayed in touch. We actually became friends. We stayed in touch. Moved back to Arizona long, long before I had cancer or a Thrive Wellness Supply was even a thought. We were already in touch, getting together. We'd have lunch occasionally. So when I decided to move forward with this, I understood that a substantial component of our business was having establishing those relationships with the designers, the builders like yourself. So I reached out to Kelly specifically because I know she has a tremendous name, great relationships. And I said, Kelly, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've been through because I hadn't spoken to her for a little while. I went through my whole, personal battle with cancer. She,
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, she loves me. loved my story, loved what I overcame, loved what we were doing and creating, and saw the need and saw the opportunity. And she said, I'm going to integrate you into my network and make the introductions. And she knew that, I could take it from there. And with people like yourself who just, not only on a personal level, but want to have a go-to resource for something to make your job easier.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll say just kudos to you. I actually went in and I did the hair follicle analysis. Before I give away, my insight to that, why don't you share what that is and what people can do, even in addition to the product and units that you sell?
Yeah, so this is an amazing test. I always say it's the most underrated test almost no one has heard of. Really quick, really simple. We take 4 hairs from the back of your head. Don't show them your bald spot there from the crack shot. No bald spot. 4 hairs from the back of your head. Put it in an analyzer. It's a German piece of equipment. Uses resonance technology to read the follicles. Now the follicles live in your head for months. So we get about a 90-day look back. That follicle is absorbing deficiencies, toxicity, pollutants, everything that lives in your body. Different than blood work. Blood work, you go, it's a very specific photo of a moment in time. You have a blood work done today, you have a bad meal, bad night's sleep, stress, you have it done tomorrow. It could be completely different than it was today. Your hair follicle is very, very stable. So we got a 90-day look back, put in that analyzer. It sends all the data over to Germany in 25 minutes, comes back from their supercomputers analyzing your hair follicle. We have a 35-page report, tells you deficiencies in vitamins, minerals, nutrient, aminos, toxicity, parasites, mold, environmental challenges, pollutants, hydrocarbons, whatever it could be. And then we sit down, as you're aware, for about 45 minutes to an hour, go through a very, very detailed report, give you a 90-day plan going forward of everything we just discussed, because it's a lot to absorb in one, in 45 minutes or an hour. Spell it all out for you, tell you exactly where you're deficient. We can supply everything you need. We have the highest quality supplements, all third party tested, all purchased direct from the manufacturers, unlike all the other online stuff. That's a whole other story. But make it really easy. And literally within 3 to 4 days, we're having people come back to us saying, my God, I can't believe how much better I feel. Again, it could be someone like you or I who's already at a very high level and wants to get to that next level to really optimize, because we all have deficiencies. Or it could be someone who's just starting the health journey and is really sick and infirmed, or somebody in between. Anybody who does it is going to get a benefit from it.
So I have mine pulled up in front of me that I think what's interesting just from hair follicles, right? You did this analysis for me. And it goes through, it talks about the optimization overview. So it's going through like vitamins, amino acids, antioxidants, environmental challenges, like you mentioned, fatty acids, foods, interference, minerals, and resistance. And just going through this, it evaluates my sleep, circulatory system, immune system, right, hormone system. And then it get into, like certain foods that I'm probably getting too much of or too little of. And, it's just incredible the amount of detail. And to your point, it gives you a good strategy. I know you've done this a few times. You've actually applied this. I just had mine done, so I haven't, gone through the 90 days yet. How's that been for you as you continue to be retested and checked?
So I retest every 3 months because, as I said, we provide a 90-day plan. So when I first tested, it showed up I had deficiencies. I had D3, B12. It tells you really specific aminos, specific fatty acids. Tells me which foods to avoid or minimize. So I made my changes, and we're finding that people who do this test, they're taking the effort, and $380, not a lot of money, but they're spending the money and taking the time to do the test, and they're abiding by what we're recommending they do in this plan, this very comprehensive, easy to follow plan. And so now when I retested, all the issues that appeared on my first test were resolved. Where I did have issues was my aminos were deficient. They find that people who are very, very active, that's very common. So our bodies just suck up our muscles and everything sucks up those aminos. So I increased those a bit above and beyond what I was doing. And my pollutants and hydrocarbons were like off the chart. So what we look for is root causes. When you fill out that really simple pre-questionnaire, we look what could have caused my pollutants, hydrocarbon levels to jump through the roof. I was standing in a construction site for 4 months as we were building out Thriver Wellness Supply. So now, as that process has ended, I've not. They should naturally go down. But what I did is I added spirulina, some other detoxifying elements and supplements, which will suck up that toxicity and pollutants. So when I test again in another roughly month or so, I should be as clear as can be.
It's interesting about the environmental challenges because I know in my results, I had a few different categories from toxic metals to chemicals and hydrocarbons, as you mentioned, and radiation.
Mhm.
And I know, being in construction, there's some risks that we may not even know. Being in certain enclosures, maybe remodels, older buildings, people that travel a lot are in airplanes. Why is this information so useful and important for people to understand?
Well, they're going to affect your health. So 95% of the people, if not more, but I know at least 95% of people doing the test, when we go through and we say, okay, these are your specific deficiencies, these are the areas of concern, and these are the potential symptoms of those deficiencies or pollutants or toxins or parasites or whatever it may be, at least 95% of the people say that's exactly what I'm
Hmm.
undergoing, whether it's lack of energy, lack of sleep, digestive issues, brain fog. So we could typically supplement. We also have, a lot of food-based supplements, which are more readily absorbed and bioavailable. But when people start addressing those deficiencies, it's so easy in most cases to make people feel better very, very quickly. Now, it's yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's I forgot the question of where I was going, but it's we could easily address that.
It's interesting the supplement side. Maybe speak on this because one of the benefits of information now, it's accessible, it's easy. If we want something from Amazon, we can order it overnight. However, the downside is that we don't know where all these vendors and suppliers are coming from, right? So specifically when it comes to supplements, ordering again, not to go after Amazon here, but there's certain online places you're ordering supplements and wellness things. What's the risk as opposed to going to a certified place like Thriver and ordering the correct supplements and knowing that it's coming from a good source?
So this is a really, really scary statistic, and this is fully verifiable all over online. So when you're buying any supplements, whether it be Amazon, Walmart, Target, any of the major retailers online, there is an 80% chance of 4 out of 5 products that are sold are fraudulent. So the why that happens really simple. So let's take vitamin C. Something really simple, Thorne vitamin C. We're a Thorne retailer, authorized dealer. We buy all our products directly from Thorne. So for years, I was going on Amazon. I was buying, years before Thriver, I was buying my Thorne supplements from the Thorne store on Amazon. Figure I'm safe. I'm buying from Thorne. Now what happens is Thorne supplies that vitamin C to Amazon. So do 30 other third party sellers who are selling that same bottle, looks identical, couldn't tell the difference. It all goes in the same bin in each warehouse. So now I go online, I go on the Thorne store, I order my vitamin C. That little Amazon robot goes over to the vitamin C Thorne bin, picks out that bottle. There's a 4 out of 5 chance that is a from a third party seller and fraudulent. So you could be taking fillers, you get no benefit. You could be taking toxic
Wow.
materials, pollutants, garbage. On the other hand, when you go to CVS, Walgreens, any of the major retailers, Walmart, you're buying off the shelf and you look at their popular brands and it says high potency. That's a trigger word, by the way. See, high
Yeah.
potency,
Right. Right.
all
Right.
natural. A lot of these things, I know to look for, but they buy the lowest quality, legitimate products with the biggest profit margin. You could be buying a vitamin C, vitamin D from a reputable brand that's a legitimate product. It's it's garbage. It's the lowest level of whatever that company makes in that specific supplement, vitamin, whatever it may be. So we are only carrying the best of the best products that I will not carry anything I don't use or I wouldn't use, and you're getting an authentic product.
I think that's really important as you think about the authentic product. And this maybe has to go with the hair follicle analysis, but how can people become more educated on maybe supplements that they should be taking?
Well, come down. So supplements is, as I said before, everybody's got deficiencies. No matter, I take about 40 pills a day, including my spirulina, 10 of those, two of these, one of these. I mean, it's like it's a big assortment of products. So, and I try to fine tune because I'm taking things that I don't need. I'm taking maybe too much of something that I do need, and then maybe in certain cases I'm taking just enough of what I should be taking. So the hair follicle analysis really allows me to fine tune. I was able to eliminate some supplements I was taking and replace them with other things which I was deficient or low in. So it's really just fine tuning and getting those specific products that I need rather than throwing all the shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. Just a much more methodical approach.
Yeah, and credit to you, I do know that like in my analysis report, it did recommend, certain supplements would be very beneficial to the things that my body's struggling with. And so it really gives you a direct, recipe, if you will, of things you can already start that treatment on.
Yeah, yeah, you're looking healthier already, I must say. But
I need a lot of work,
yeah,
trust me.
but no, listen, you're in a position where you're exposed to a tremendous amount of toxins, pollutants, job
Hmm.
sites, off gassing from woods and materials and whatever it may
Paint,
be.
whatever. Yeah.
Everything. I mean, you're literally walking into a toxic environment, in a construction site every single day of your life. So, also, one of the things I didn't point out is our hair follicle analysis tests epigenetic factors. So, epigenetic factors are genetic factors which are in our genetics, but which are modifiable factors: diet, stress, exercise, nutrition, supplementation. So these are modifiable factors. Now, if we don't address these factors, they're going to affect the way we feel, we operate, could be how long we live. They can be passed on to our children, but epigenetic as opposed to genetic, we can address, we can modify, we can correct. So you feel better, you live longer, you're not passing these on to your offspring.
It's really interesting. As we pivot back to the, just from the product side, do you see that there's any specific wellness trends that are here to stay versus ones that may fade over time?
I think the oldest of the wellness trends, I think, are here forever. Sauna, in some way, shape, or form, long before there was electricity. They were in hot
Hmm.
environments. They just came out with maybe a year ago a study in Finland. They had, I believe, it was 70,000 people over 20 years. They closely tracked their progress. And people in Finland, everybody's using, hot the
Hmm.
baths they call them, saunas, steam, and they found that people who use the sauna 4 or more times a week at I believe it's 63% lower cause cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, all cause mortality. 3 or 4 times a week was like 40%. Even once, twice a week was like 20 or 22%. Cold plunge has been around for hundreds of years in some way, shape, or form. You're jumping in the natural waters. I think those are here to stay. We're in a tremendous age right now with AI and technology where we're going to start seeing in the pretty, near future a lot of this equipment being integrated with AI and other technologies where it's going to be able to personalize treatments to you and to your specific issues, whether it be on a day to day, on a long term basis, whether it be cancer, inflammation, whatever it may be. But I think PMF, hyperbaric, I mean, the benefits are tremendous. And they're just finding red light therapy, what everybody should be doing. You and I had this discussion the other day.
Hmm.
At a baseline, everybody should be doing that. And again, you want immediate gratification, you get it. But it's, they're just finding more and more and more proven benefits, well established benefits in rigorous testing again and again and again that people are receiving.
I do want to touch on some of these specifics because you brought up sauna cold plunge, which we'll come back to, but you bring up the red light therapy. I think a lot of people are familiar with the face mask you're putting on. I was always taught you do it at night. You're saying no, do it in the morning. It's better in the morning. But walk through. You mentioned early on the price. If I'm not mistaken, it's like $6,500 for a full body red light, more or less, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
not
Mhm.
it's not a crazy
That's a
cost or
commercial
price.
grade panel. Can be
Yeah,
used residential. Yeah.
right. Commercial grade that you're putting in a residential
Mhm.
home. What are the benefits? How does that work for a full body? Time limit, time required, as well as like some of the benefits.
Time easy as can be. 10 minutes front, 10 minutes back. Maybe you go 12 minutes, 14 minutes, but 10 minutes is adequate. What I said when I use red light in the morning, they found that red light stimulates at a topical level stimulates collagen production in the skin, so it's very, very beneficial for skin health, anti-aging over the very long term. It's effective as Botox. Our eyes are mostly collagen. People don't realize that. So by keeping your eyes closed, it filters the red light, but it still penetrates, gets into your eyes, can help improve. I don't even need readers in a lot of cases to read.
Mm.
These are readers. I'm at a much lower magnification than I was 2 years ago. I've gone down. It's
And
very
this
good
is
for
from
eye health.
using red light every
This is
day.
exclusively for red light. It's also very good. So red light works off wavelengths. It penetrates to a cellular level. So in terms of circulation, very good for your heart, stress, recovery. I tell everybody, my wife takes a lot of classes at the gym, does some really tough classes. If she does red light after the class, within a couple of hours after the class, a day and 2 days later, she's about 75% less sore than when she doesn't do it. So in terms of recovery, I use it 7 days a week. So I use it before I work out, then I use sauna afterwards. Also great. We can talk about that after. But red light has so many benefits from a topical level all the way down to a cellular level. And there are really no downsides to it. There are just more and more and more benefits. And you feel it. After a week or two, you absolutely will notice those benefits.
What about the PEMF?
So PEMF, as I said, it's like laying on the earth, getting that grounding, but a very high level. That is very healing. So both from a cellular level, recharging your mitochondria, ATP, which provides the energy to our cells and our body to function. It's very good for mental, for stress, pain, recovery. I've had 2 rounds of epidurals. I've had, I think, 350 trigger point injections in my back. So my back is always, you know, now it's better than it's been in decades using all the modalities. But, I always feel it. It works all over.
Now, going as we pivot back to the sauna and cold plunge, I do agree. I think these have been around for a long time. There's a tremendous amount of studies, from blood flow and Alzheimer's that you mentioned, and stress. I mean, there's a lot of things that it does so well for you. Is there a recommendation of how much you should do the cold plunge? How long should you do it? Right after you work out or later in the day? What are some recommendations for those who are looking at doing cold plunging?
So personally, I cold plunge. I literally wake up, I brush my teeth, I have my spot inside my house, and I go in the cold plunge. I do 5 minutes at 48 degrees.
Wow,
Started at three
that's so
minutes,
cool.
53
Yeah,
degrees, and 48
yeah.
degrees. I'll get into that after, but it's cold, but it's great. It's the best way to start the day. As soon as I hit that cold water, you get an immediate dopamine and endorphin release. It targets inflammation, tremendous for inflammation. So there is an absolute physical and mental benefit that you get immediately. Again, everybody wants immediate gratification. I always say there's nothing you can do in 3 to 5 minutes that you get this kind of benefit. Nothing. So I like to do it first thing in the day. A friend of mine told me, he said, if you can get that out of the way the first thing in the morning, it's probably the toughest thing you can do all day. The rest of the day
Yeah.
is easy. I literally go to sleep craving getting up and going in the plunge. It's still cold, but it's not shocking to me anymore. I've gotten past that. That's a mental thing. I've gotten past that. I feel great. I move better. Then I eat my breakfast. Then I do my red light therapy, 20 minutes, 10 front, 10 back. Then I do my lifting. Then 3 to 4 days a week, I use my sauna for recovery. So getting back to cold plunge, the misconception with cold plunge is you're getting in a tub, a bucket, whatever it may be, full of ice. So everybody thinks that they hear cold plunging, immediately, they think of ice. It's not the
Mhm.
case. From everything I've found, everything I've seen, there's no mental benefit or physical benefit to getting for me to go from 48 degrees to 38 degrees to 32 degrees. Now I do add that risk for hypothermia and other
Mhm.
things at those much lower temperatures, but I'm not getting an additional physical benefit. Now I am getting that mental fortitude where it's certainly a lot
Mhm.
tougher to get in a 32-degree tub than it is a 48-degree tub. So maybe that aspect, and they have found that people who cold plunge and people who cold plunge at even colder temperatures are more mentally resilient. That is now an established
Hmm.
fact that you can look that up online. But it's truly the best way I've ever found to start the day. I'd never cold plunged in my life before about a little over a year and a half ago. I started cold plunging. I did 70 days straight until I had to take 3 days off because I was diagnosed being at the tail end of the flu. And now I do 6 days a week because I figure, you know what? No matter how good something is, we probably need a break from it. So I've landed at 6 days. Best thing I've ever done in my life.
It's funny. I've right now I have not been, but there was a window there that I always did cold plunge first thing in the morning, and I would agree to start your day that way. It's unlike anything else. To just it's hard to explain. And keep in mind, I grew up in San Diego. I hated the Pacific Ocean. It's always freezing. Like it's miserable. We do the cold plunge in Christmas with, my brother at his house. But I find myself not as scared of cold water. To your point, all the research I've seen, yeah, whether your water's 35 degrees, 39 degrees, 42, 48, it's not a huge difference mentally, probably, from like that side, but from a physical side, not as much. But it is amazing as you mentioned, dopamine and energy and just you do something hard and how much easier it is throughout the day.
Yeah, there is. I always say again that it's that getting into a cold plunge when you haven't done it, when you don't do it, is likely the most unappealing thought that you could have or experience.
Yeah.
And nobody, and almost everybody, without fail, mentions the cold shower. I can't even take cold showers. I said,
I hate cold showers.
I
I
can't
hate cold
either,
showers.
but that's not a cold plunge. It's a different objective, a different purpose.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's the best. If I had to, if I'm often asked if I had to choose any one modality, I can only use one modality for the rest of my time. I say cold plunge.
When one last thing on the cold plunge, I've heard people say that like if you're lifting, let's say you go lift, Stephen, for an hour, you're lifting, you should not do the cold plunge right after that. Maybe hours before, maybe later in the day if you're going to do that. Is that true? Like, what do you recommend for someone that's trying to lift and do cold plunge?
That's an excellent point, Brad. So when we're lifting, we're artificially breaking down and tearing those muscle fibers in a good way and creating good inflammation. When that repairs itself and heals, we're building muscle. So by getting in a cold plunge, now this is where there's some not such precise data. Could be 4 hours, could be 6 to 8 hours. I usually tell people at least for 6 hours, try not to plunge because we're artificially expediting that recovery process, inflammation, repairing those muscles. So you're negating much of what you just accomplished by doing that strength training. So typically I
Mm.
tell people 6 hours afterwards, don't cold plunge. Now, on the other side, I tell people if you are going to cold plunge before exercising, try to do it about at least 45 minutes before because the last thing you want to do is get in a cold plunge and then go do strength training or a class or
Yeah.
something maybe when your body's ice cold because then there's a much higher propensity for injury. So
Hmm.
45 minutes exercise, at least 45 minutes after, and cold plunge typically 6, 7 hours after strength training. Other training, you're running, you're doing other things, jump right in. But when you're strength training, you want to give your body that chance to naturally recover.
It's amazing advice. What keeps you up at night?
If I could pinpoint just one thing, I could probably fix it. I'm sure, like you, my mind, it's a blessing and a curse because it never stops. It's like a machine. I find that when I was competing, I was in a cage, I was fighting. You know, it made me be present in the moment. Otherwise it's very, very, very tough because no matter what I'm doing, I'm thinking about what can I do better? What did I miss? What do I need to do next? So I'm just going. I'm always thinking about, fortunately, unfortunately, I'm never at a level where I'm satisfied. It's a moving bar, and that's how people like us operate. And I'm
Hmm.
always striving for that next level. And when I hit it, the bar has moved. So I just go, 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 and try to, enjoy my time while I'm here. But it's challenging sometimes.
You definitely don't rest, Stephen, and it's hard when you're go, go, go. It's definitely, it takes a toll on you. What do you do for fun?
Well, I like to punch people in the face in a good way, in a ring, in a cage. I love strength training.
Like clients like us, or
Exactly. Yeah. Don't complain about our equipment. No, in the right environment. But no, I love to. My wife, my kids both live in LA now. I would say I love to travel, but I'm the guy who loves to travel, but really doesn't travel much because there's always something
yeah.
gets in the way, business and
Mhm.
otherwise. But I love doing things around health and wellness, whether it be, if I can do it with my wife, with my kids, whatever it may be. I'm a big TV movie guy. I'm like comes to like 80s, 90s, whatever it may be. But it's all good. And I love to appreciate, like I can visit a home like the home you built, and I just have an extreme appreciation for the whole creation process, like what you do, what people we deal with do, and that creating from nothing this spectacular home object, whatever it may be. It's I love just the process.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love the process too. I think it's amazing to what people can envision, such as yourself, right, Stephen, and then to go in and execute that. It's fun to see that come together. You mentioned you're a big fan of 80s and 90s. Is there what's your favorite movie or TV show?
Well, Seinfeld, best sitcom ever.
Seinfeld's great, especially being a New
Seinfeld,
Yorker. I can see
yeah. Seinfeld is a must. Movies,
that.
well, I'm a '70s, really grew up as '70s, more '80s. Scarface, Godfather, Wall Street.
Yeah,
Um,
good ones.
some early Eddie movie stuff. What about you?
That's a good question. I think one of my favorite movies is The Dark Knight. The way that they depicted, Heath Ledger and Joker and Batman. I don't know. I thought that was, and it's funny because I don't watch a ton of like superhero movies, like a lot of those movies that come out like Guardians of the Galaxy. My kids love them, and I've
Yeah,
missed almost all. People laugh. I've never seen Iron Man, and I think Iron Man I've heard is awesome. And it's like 20 years old now. I've still never seen it, but I think the Batman one was The Dark Knight was one of my favorite movies. I thought it was just so well, very creative to take Batman and create a different look for it. So
yeah. I love like movies or things that make me think.
yeah,
And he was talking about like Mad Men and all these great shows that were on and have a story and are based a lot of it in reality because you could learn a lot from them. And a
yeah,
lot of these things we watch and reading books and things, and you look these fiction and they're really a lot of it either comes true or was based on truth.
yeah. There's always a little
So
bit of truth in there somewhere.
yeah, it's all good.
Well, you've been amazing, Stephen. I really appreciate the friendship, the knowledge, the education you gave to our audience. I know a lot of people listening will be interested. Where can they find you? How can they get in touch with you? Especially, I know that you're working with people all over the U.S., not just local. So, anyone that wants more information, they want to come in, send their clients there. How do they move forward?
So Thriver Wellness Supply is located in Scottsdale on Scottsdale Road. We're one block north of the quarter in Kierland. Find us online, thriveronline.com. Our social pages, Thriver Wellness Supply. And so we do sell, as you said, we ship to all 50 states. We have clients we're working with in many states now. We can, if they want to come into town, visit our showroom, we can do it via Zoom, via telephone, whatever it may be. So, we're here to answer questions. We love talking about wellness. So you want to pop in, just talk about wellness, learn about our offerings, whatever it may be. It's what we do. It's our lives.
I love it. You can see the passion behind it, and that's what made the episode so great. So, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for having me, Brad. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, being on your podcast, and I look forward to getting to know you even better and doing some great work together.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.